I am a big fan of my community. I am always there for them. That's why I'm part of the restaurant. Since we use natural gas, we've been able to save money to make the restaurant prettier. We've made many changes to the kitchen, but the seasoning continues to be the same. And with the savings, we've been able to buy more products to improve everybody's nutrition. Natural gas is a very important ingredient to continue to support our community. For unstoppable Peruvians, the unstoppable energy of Cálidda. 18 years generating better quality of life for the families of Lima and Callao. It's 6 million Peruvians that have saved more than $580 million thanks to natural gas. Give quality to your life. Give Cálidda. Good morning. My name is Manuela Ramirez. I am the Finance and Investor Relations Manager at the GEB. Welcome to our results presentation. This conference will be in Spanish with simultaneous translation and is being recorded. The results were published yesterday and can be consulted in our website. Today's call will be led by Álvaro Roca, the Finance Manager at GEB, and Mr. Contreras and Ms. Beatriz from the Financial Department. We will also have directors from other companies, and we will be answering questions. Now, Álvaro Roca will share the initial results. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this first results call. I would like to start with some good news, which is that after 2022 and the political situation that we lived through and everything is under control, that's a common question to us. And in Lima, the situation is business as usual. The things have not changed for Cálidda. The economic and social scenario has not changed. We are focused on bringing more natural gas to the people. We are currently analyzing the use of the funds that were destined at the end of last year, which is around $35 million for a new distribution system. We are building the network design, and we will talk more about it in the next session. Another important development that we've seen is that this quarter we now have more than 1.5 million customers connected, and also with our debt management, we have successfully refinanced the bonds that we issued in 2013. Having said this, please move on to the next slide. The income has been very strong, and we have had organic growth. This includes specific factors that is due to the maintenance of external thermal plants, and that's why volume is higher than in 2022. On the organic aspect, this corresponds to the GNB volume with more than 25 million. And as I said a couple of minutes ago, the operations of the distribution system has been at 100%. In terms of connections, we have near 65,000 connections, which is the same thing as first quarter last year. This is due to a slower quarter compared to the next that we want to have this year, but this is also due to the level of maturity of the company. This is something that we'll look at into next slides. And it will have to do with the expansion plans for this year and the next year. What we will see in the next couple of slides is that we have a growth rate in our networks that is decreasing. We have built 280 kilometers of networks compared to 474 from last year, but this is totally in line with the expansion plan for this year. In terms of EBITDA, we had $56 million, 5% more than last year. This is something that we expect to maintain and even increase in the future, and we will see it in projections for this year and next year, and this is due to the increase in volume that we had during this first quarter. From the risk perspective, we maintain our ratings. We were rated by Moody's at the same as last year, the same rating. We've also had the AAA rating, that is the highest rating possible. Next slide, please. As I said before, this first quarter was marked by the refinancing of the $320 million debt. We had a rate at 4.37 for the bonds that we issued in 2013. This was refinanced successfully, and we were able to bring down 94 BPS less down to 3.44. It is important to mention that on January 17, we inaugurated the first liquefied natural gas station, the first one in Latin America, with the GESA company. We want to be the pioneers and, in a way, create a demand to be able to provide more natural gas to vehicles, and in this specific case, liquid natural gas. This required an investment of around $1 million. We've also benefited around 5,000 people with more than 300 baskets and 99 LPG tanks. This is due to the period of intense rain that we had. It was very irregular. We saw throughout the country, especially in the coasts. And we provided 2,500 kilograms of food and 3 water tanks. In terms of sustainability and being able to generate awareness around the country, we supported a film called Queens Without a Crown, and it wants to create awareness around
esa energía que te acompaña todos los días, la energía que mueve a todo un país, que nos brinda un aire más limpio para respirar, que impulsa a las empresas a ser más competitivas con sus productos y servicios sostenibles para todos, que transforma vidas y lleva prosperidad colectiva a su alrededor. En TGI estamos comprometidos con esa energía, la energía de la transición, el gas natural, la energía para hoy, mañana y el futuro. TGI, mejoramos vidas con energía sostenible y competitiva.
Desde la perspectiva operacional comercial, tuvimos un volumen facturado, como mencioné, de 772 millones de pies cúbicos día. Aquí lo que vemos es un crecimiento, tal vez en el gráfico no se ve, pero del sector GNB sigue creciendo muy fuerte. Estamos por sobre 65 millones de pies cúbicos día de consumo, con lo cual creemos y seguimos apuntando a que este sector va a ser el foco de crecimiento en los próximos años. Los demás sectores se han mantenido relativamente estables. Y bueno, el que sigue creciendo con mayor dinamismo siempre va a
to
ser
grow
el
will always be residential and commercial with greater connections. This always leveraged with the connectivity distribution rate, which is in lighter blue. It maintains with a competitivity around more than 40% in all of our segments, and we do not see that this is going to change. In fact, together with the growth in volume that we expect to achieve in the future, we should be able to maintain that at a stable rate with the level of competitiveness that we've had so far. In terms of connections for the quarter, we had around 65,000 connections. These are basically located in the most vulnerable sectors, with more than 92% of clients connected. Of these 1.6 million, they belong to the lowest socioeconomic levels in our country. As you can see, the distribution system, as I have said before, ended the quarter with an increase of 280 kilometers, which is a decrease due to the fact that we are nearing more maturity in the company, but always in line with the government strategy. And it's precisely here, which together with the government, we expect to add more kilometers with the $35 million funds that were recently approved. Next slide, please. The EBITDA for the quarter was $56 million. This is to show you what we had in 2022. We had a high point of $61 million. That was product of an out of the ordinary purchase where we sold some of our portfolio to a bank, and that presented an increase in the EBITDA. The levels that we expect from $56 to $60 million per quarter looking into the future. And the operating cash flow, we also see the effect of the transactions in the fourth quarter of 2022, and thanks to our stability and the predictability of the consumption, we expect the operating cash flow to maintain and also grow in the future. In terms of our debt, we closed the quarter with a debt of $892 million. What we are seeing here is that this debt is including the refinancing of the $320 million bonds, and we have a sustainable loan with BBA for $80 million. But the important thing to mention here is that the financial cost for Cálidda is not above 4.5% on the close to $900 million debt. We have a financing that we need to repay, $80 million at the end of June, and for this, we have already gotten the funds that will allow us to cover with cash the operation, this $80 million. The financial performance is in line with the expectations. There is a growth of around 3.6. The net EBITDA debt, we have more cash flow at the end of the quarter, but this will naturally be used to expand the distribution system, and it should return to lower levels and always below the multiple of 4. And the interest expense for EBITDA, we also closed the quarter at 7.2, which is at a slightly decreasing trend, but we expect to rebound in next periods. This is our perspectives for the end of the year. We expect to execute around 1,250 kilometers of our network. This is above the commitment that we've had with the regulator. We also expect to perform between 215,000 and 230,000 connections. We expect an EBITDA of around $220 million, and we will get a multiple of 3.7 or 3.8 net debt over EBITDA. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Pedro. Seguimos entonces con la presentación de TGI. Después de un corto video, le doy la palabra a Mónica Contreras, presidenta de TGI.
Of TGI.
Hola, buenos días. Hola, muy buenos días a todos. No sé si corren video.
Good morning, everybody. I don't know if we're going to see the video or shall I start?
Perfecto. Bueno, muy buenos días a
Good
todos.
morning, everybody.
Un gusto
It is
presentar
a
los
pleasure
resultados
to be
de
able to hear
TGI del
presenting
primer
TGI
trimestre.
results for
Si
the
me dan
first
paso a la
quarter.
siguiente
Please
diapositiva.
move on to the next slide.
Siguiente, por favor. En donde básicamente
Where,
con mucha satisfacción
with a high
queremos
level of
reportar a
satisfaction,
ustedes
we want to
resultados
report to you
extraordinarios en
extraordinary
este
results
primer
for
trimestre,
this first
lo que
quarter,
refleja la solidez financiera,
which reflects
la
the
efectividad de nuestros
financial
planes de acción y todo el
strength of the company,
reconocimiento
our
también de grupos
action
de
plan,
interés
and
que hemos
also
recibido.
the
Como ustedes
recognition
pueden
from
observar, los ingresos de
interest
TGI
groups and
crecieron alrededor
stakeholders.
de casi
As
un 2%.
we
Y muy
see
importante reportar que
that
nuestro margen
our
EBITDA
income grew
crece
and
un
our EBITDA margin
4.3%, que
grew by
significó crecer
4.3%. That
2 puntos
meant
porcentuales
an
de
increase of
margen
2
EBITDA, llegando a
percentage
niveles
increase
arriba
in
del
EBITDA levels, reaching
81%,
more
con
than
una utilidad
81%,
operacional que
with an
crece un
operational
9.2 y una neta
profit
que crece
that
un
grew
94%, dado
8.2%,
el buen manejo financiero de algunos
and this
temas
reflects
que más
great
adelante
financial
nuestra
management,
vicepresidenta
which we
financiera
will hear
les
from later
va
on
a
from our
mencionar.
financial vice president.
Relevante y muy importante
A very
para este
relevant
resultado
aspect
de lo
for
que fue
these
este
results,
crecimiento de
which
este
was
margen
the
EBITDA que
growth
nos
over the
lleva
EBITDA margin,
también, al igual que
that
la utilidad neta que nos
as
lleva a niveles
net income
de 41
takes
millones de
us
dólares en
to
este
a
primer
level of
trimestre, lo
$41
que
million
ya empezamos
net
a
income in
capturar
this first
de
quarter.
todas las
We've already
eficiencias y
started
el
to
trabajo
capture
de
all of the
eficiencias que a lo
efficiencies and
largo
the
de
work on
todas
the
las
efficiencies that
presentaciones
throughout
les hemos
all the
venido
presentations we
comentando
have been
en cada una de estas
telling you about
divisiones
in each
y
of
que
these
ya cuando comparamos
presentations.
trimestre
And
contra
when we
trimestre
compare
empieza a
quarter by
mostrar
quarter, it
resultados
starts to show
extraordinarios.
extraordinary
Desde el lado de
results.
todo lo que es el
In
desempeño
terms of
regulatorio, sé que
regulatory
ya están haciendo
performance,
algunas
I know
preguntas
that you're already
sobre este
asking
tema, pero
questions to
realmente
this regard.
hemos tenido
We
versus
really,
nuestras
well,
proyecciones
compared to our projections,
unos,
we've
llamémoslos
had,
así,
let's call them
beneficios financieros
financial
que
benefits
es básicamente
that are
evitados frente
basically
a todo lo que ha
avoided
significado el cambio de
with regards
dólares a
to what has
pesos
meant
en
the
nuestra
exchange
tarifa.
from dollars
Y
to
por
pesos
último,
at our
desde el
exchange
lado
rate.
de todo lo que es
And
el desempeño
in
comercial,
terms of
pues
commercial
también
performance,
traemos
we
muy buenos
also bring
resultados
very good
por
results
contrataciones, por
because we
demandas,
have
tanto de
contracted
todo lo que es
demand
petroquímicas,
from the
que para
petrochemical
nosotros es
sector,
muy
which for us
importante,
is very
como lo que
important,
significa el
which has
negocio
meant,
core. Como vemos,
which
hoy
is
nos
very
sentimos
important to our
muy
core
orgullosos de
business.
estar
Today,
llegando
we
a
are
18
proud
millones de
to have
usuarios,
18
con lo que
million users,
significa para nosotros
which
este
means
compromiso
for us
de
that
lo
we
que
have
es
fulfilled
gas
our
para el futuro.
commitment to provide
No
gas for our
quiero y
future.
realmente creo que es muy
I
importante
think that it is very important
que mencionarles
to
que nos
mention
sentimos muy
that
orgullosos
we feel
también
very
de
proud
lo que ha
also of the
significado
fact
nuestra agenda
of
de diversidad e inclusión.
our
No puedo
diversity and inclusion agenda.
avanzar sin comentar con ustedes este reconocimiento que hemos obtenido
This is an
en este periodo
acknowledgement
por la
that we've
organización
received
que es
from
Cuales, que
the
ratifica el enorme
Psyqualis
trabajo que hemos hecho
organization that
en
reflects
TGI
the
para
enormous
cerrar
work that
todas
we've
las
done at
brechas
TGI
de
to close
diversidad,
all of the
equidad e
diversity,
inclusión.
equity, and
Fuimos la
inclusion
primera
gaps.
compañía del
We were
sector
the first
comercial
company in
gas
the
entre
energy
las empresas con
sector
200 a
among
1000
companies with
empleados,
more than
ocupando el
between 200
tercer
and 1,000
puesto
employees.
en
We
dicho
occupied the
ranking,
third
lo cual
place
nos
in
llena de
said ranking,
satisfacción. Y
which is a source
adicionalmente
of
quedamos el
satisfaction for
puesto
us.
número
And we
7
also were
entre todas las
the seventh
empresas
place
colombianas y
among
el puesto
all
11
Colombian companies
entre
and
más de
11th
700
place
empresas de
among
Latinoamérica.
710
Entonces,
companies in
realmente
Latin
este
America.
resultado nos llena a nosotros
So
de
this
orgullo porque
result
avanzamos
fills us
no
with pride
solamente
because we not
desde
only
lo que significa
advanced
un resultado financiero,
in
sino
terms of
también
financial
una
results, but
consistencia
also
en
we
nuestras
were consistent
acciones para
in
ganar con la
our
diversidad e
actions
inclusión.
towards
Siguiente cuadro, por
diversity,
favor.
equity, and inclusion.
Gracias. Aquí quiero resaltar, recuerden
Here
que
I would
nuestra
like to
brújula
highlight
en
that,
todo lo
if you
que
might
es
recall, our
los resultados siempre
North
han
Star
sido
in terms of
básicamente
results has
5
been
pilares y una
basically
capacidad
around
que
5
cruza.
pillars
En
and a
estos pilares, en el
cross-cutting
pilar, voy a empezar por el centro, por la eficiencia, que es algo de lo que
efficiency.
siempre les hemos
Let's
venido
start
hablando.
in the middle
Fíjense
with
que les
efficiency.
mencionaba en el cuadro anterior
As I
los
mentioned
buenos
in the last
resultados que
slide,
traemos en
the good
eficiencia.
results that we've had
Traemos
in
en este
efficiency,
momento una
we
eficiencia
have
acumulada
a cumulative
sostenida
efficiency
para el
sustained
presupuesto del
in the
2023,
2023
para los
budget
resultados del 2023
for the
de
results of
18
2023
millones
of
de dólares,
$8.2
que
million,
son eficiencias
which are
sostenidas
sustained
y que están
efficiencies
dentro del PIG del negocio,
and
dentro del P&L.
are
Hemos
within the
involucrado en
P&L of the
este primer
business.
trimestre
In this
10
first
nuevas
quarter, we've brought
iniciativas
in 10 new
adicionales
initiatives,
y básicamente seguimos
and we
incubando
basically
ideas de
continue to
eficiencia que para
incubate
nosotros
ideas
es
for
desafío en
efficiency
lo que significa
which is very important for us in terms of the results that we are bringing to you today. We've also been working strongly on a plan that we will talk to you later on in the next couple of months, an optimized plan of inspections to our facilities with smart tools for our transport infrastructure as a key aspect where we are using technology to be able to drive efficiencies. On the expansion pillar, another of our most important pillars in our roadmap and in our strategy, here it's important for you to see that at the hiring level, we've hired a transportation service for more than $1 million over 3 months to replace coal in industry in the western part of the country. And additionally, we've brought higher income from additional daily interruptible transport and this has been due to additional contracting and contingencies of Ecopetrol. And we also had more income, as I said, contingencies of Ecopetrol. On the transformation pillar, it's important to highlight that we have the good news for you today, that we have 100% digitized information in terms of patrolling and inspection of the right-of-way. We now have 15 compression stations that have been implementing these technological developments for our digitized operational rounds. And last but not least, the results of the distributed hydrogen pilot are very satisfactory. We have very good results in the progress of this pilot. When you look, it's important to mention that from our side, basically through this pilot, we've seen significant reduction in the fuel consumption at minus 12%, less 40% CO2, 10% in particulate matter, 14% in particulate matter, and we've emitted pure O2. I want to give you a snapshot of what is happening on the regulatory front, because this for us has been one of the most relevant aspects where TGI has been doing some regulatory management and government management that is very sustained alongside its strategic financial plan to mitigate the impact of the exchange rate from USD to COP. So I want to tell you that on the regulatory side, regarding the methodology, the remuneration methodology for gas transportation, we've advanced in phase 1 in our we have advanced our hedging plan. We've drafted publication of the WACC recalculation, increasing WACC from 1094 to 1188 based on a TGI request. And we can also reiterate our request to the CREG on aggregation of the TGI tariff brackets, which for us is key in light of trying to bring more affordable tariffs to remote cities. And regarding the draft resolution of the CREG 702009 that modifies resolution 175, I would like to highlight that TGI incorporated proposals and required the CREG assurance against some key aspects. Number 1, remuneration of assets that meet the RUL with regulatory WACC, which is the famous opportunity cost, and number 2, a recognition of partial U.S. debt hedging costs. So we are very proud of these results. Next slide, please. Here it's important to highlight that even though we have made a lot of progress, as we have seen in the previous slides, from the financial point of view and from the point of view of our strategic pillars,
venimos y al momento actual del país, nosotros venimos
Given the
trabajando
current
muy, muy
situation
fuerte
in
en lo
our
que
country, we've been
significa
working
seguir
on
habilitando
trying
el
to
gas
continue
como
to
el energético
enable
de la transición.
gas as
Y
the
hace un tiempo
transition
yo recuerdo
fuel.
que nosotros les presentamos a ustedes
I
en
recall
una
that
reunión
we
como esta
had,
los
in a
resultados
meeting like
que
this, we presented
TGI
the results
traía
that TGI
respecto a un estudio que
brought
desarrolló
regarding
con
a
el
study
CRE
that we
respecto
did
a las
together with the
perspectivas del
CRE
sector.
regarding the
Para
perspectives
nosotros
for
en
this
este
sector.
momento,
For
si
us right
recuerdan
now,
ustedes,
if you might
dentro de ese
recall,
estudio, entre las
that
necesidades
study
de
said that
acelerar
among the
la
needs of
descarbonización y el
accelerating
desarrollo de
decarbonization
tecnologías
and the
o
development of new
nuevas
technologies
energías, nosotros
or
les
new
presentamos que
sources of
existían
energy, we
tres
said
escenarios
that we had
posibles.
3
Y lo
possible
que estamos
scenarios.
haciendo en
And what
paralelo
we
a
are
que
doing
estamos
in
avanzando con
parallel
todo
with
lo que significa
progress
la estrategia propia del
in our
negocio
own
es
business strategy
reiterar
is that
que con
we are
estudios de mercado
reiterating
como
that
este que
with
hemos corrido,
market studies like
investigaciones
this one
que
and
estamos
research that
haciendo
we
en
are
todos los
doing
escenarios,
in all
desde
of
el
these
más
scenarios,
pesimista
from
con
the
una
most
descarbonización
pessimistic with the
acelerada hasta el
accelerated
más conservador
decarbonization
de las circunstancias.
down to the
En
most conservative
Colombia
scenario.
siempre
In
vamos a
Colombia,
necesitar
we will
el gas
always
natural
going to need
mínimo
natural
hasta el
gas
año 2050,
until
es decir,
2050
por
at
los
least.
próximos 30
That
años.
means for the next
También
30 years.
identificamos que básicamente la
We also
industria de la
identified
movilidad
that
y la
industry,
generación térmica
mobility, and
son
thermal
sectores
generation are
prioritarios para
priority
avanzar en la
sectors
descarbonización.
to advance
Deben entrar
towards
a la siguiente
decarbonization.
diapositiva, por favor. Así las cosas, nuestro rol no se ha quedado solamente
So our
en ser un
role is
transportador
not
de gas.
only
Estamos
a
comprometidos con
transporter
el
of natural
desarrollo
gas. We are
de todo el
committed
sector
to
y con la
develop the whole
necesidad de
sector,
que posicionemos
and
el gas como el
given the need that we
energético de la
position
transición.
gas
Por eso
as
desde
the
TGI
transition
estamos
fuel. So
proponiendo
that's
una
why at
hoja
TGI
de ruta de
we
gas
are
natural. Y
presenting
esa es
a
una nueva
natural
noticia para
gas
todos
roadmap.
ustedes.
And this is
Este documento
new
ya ha sido
news for all of you,
socializado
because
en
even
diferentes
though this
instancias,
document has
será
been published
lanzado
in
a
different
medios de comunicación
instances, it will
próximamente
be given to the
como
media
a las instancias del
soon,
gobierno, ¿de
and also
acuerdo?
we will present
Es
it to
muy
the government,
importante y seguiremos
and
socializándolo
we will
entonces con
continue to
congresos y con otros
disseminate
sectores.
it
Este documento
through
contiene 22
other sectors.
recomendaciones que se
This
pueden
document
agrupar en
contains
tres
22
grandes grupos de
recommendations that can
necesidades.
be grouped into 3
Primer
needs
punto,
groups. The
asegurar la
first
oferta de
point is
gas
to
en el
ensure
mediano
gas
y largo
supply in the
plazo.
medium and long term.
Segundo, asegurar que el
The
mercado
second
sea
need is to
mucho
ensure
más
a
flexible
market
y
that is more
competitivo. Y
flexible and
tercero,
competitive. And the third need
esta hoja de
is
ruta del
that
gas
this
natural
roadmap
debe dar señales a la demanda para asegurar
must signal
condiciones
to
que
the demand to
permitan su
ensure
consumo. Este
conditions
punto
that
para
allow its
nosotros es
consumption.
muy importante.
This is
Con
a
la
very
hoja de
important
ruta
point for us.
estamos mostrando
With
que el
the
tema no es
roadmap, we
solamente
are
también de demanda,
showing that this
sino
is
que
not
también
only up to
necesitamos
demand, but we
tener
also
certeza sobre la
need to
oferta.
have
Para esto se requiere de
assurances
actores
on the
claves como
supply.
gobierno,
We
reguladores,
require
gremios
actors
y
such as the
empresas.
government, the regulators,
Justamente
and
TGI
companies.
no solo ha diseñado la hoja de ruta que va a aportar al
TGI
gas,
has not
sino que
only
además,
designed the
desde el punto de
roadmap
vista
to
del
deliver
rol de
more
lo que es la
gas, but
empresa,
also in
estamos
terms of the
trabajando
role
para
of
dar
our company, we
soluciones
are
a
working
la
to
tercera
provide
necesidad.
solutions to the
Y
third
como lo
need.
está haciendo, básicamente lo
And
estamos haciendo
the way
con
we are doing it
focos
is
en dos temas.
basically
Primero,
focusing on
en
2
planificar
issues.
las
Number
inversiones
one,
y
to plan
acompañar la
investments
demanda
and
en
support
todo lo que
demand
es el proceso de
in the
sustitución
process
de
of energy
energéticos en su
substitution and
trayectoria de
emission
reducción de emisiones.
reduction
Y
trajectory.
segundo,
And number two,
marcar todo lo que,
we
enfocar todo
are
lo que significa
focusing
los
on
esfuerzos
natural gas
de
penetration
penetración de gas
efforts
natural en los segmentos de demanda
on
en los
demand
que el gas
segments
en el
in
marco
which gas within the
de
framework
toda esta
of a
trayectoria
carbon
de la
neutrality
carbono
trajectory
neutralidad tiene mayor
has a
tiempos de
longer
permanencia.
time
De
permanence.
esta manera,
In this
les
way,
reitero
as I
que
said,
trabajamos no solamente
we are not
en lo que
only working
significa
on
nuestro
what
desempeño
our
como
own
negocio,
performance
sino
has to
en
be
el
as a business, but
posicionamiento
also
de lo
in
que significa
positioning
ganar con el gas como ese energético de la
gas
transición,
as the
generando una hoja de ruta
fuel
que
for
nos
the
permita que
transition,
por los
creating
próximos 30
a
años
natural
el
gas
rol del gas
roadmap
en el mercado
that allows
colombiano
the
sea
role of natural
sostenible
gas
y
for the
sustentable
next
para
30
el
years
país.
be
Con esto le doy
sustainable and
entrada
profitable for the
a
country.
Wolfgang Levy, a la
With
siguiente,
this, I
nuestro
hand over the floor
vicepresidente
to
comercial,
Wolfgang
a
Levy,
la
our
siguiente
financial
diapositiva.
vice president.
Gracias, Mónica. Muy buenos días. Soy Wolfgang Levy, vicepresidente de Desarrollo Comercial de TGI. Bueno, les voy a comentar un poco en torno a lo que es la estrategia comercial de TGI, lo que es la demanda y el
we see in this first table a year-on-year comparison in renewed contracts and renewed contract capacity. In Q4 in 2022, we renewed 18 contracts with a capacity of 114,000 cubic feet per day. We see an increase in first quarter of 2023. We have 29 renewed contracts and a renewed capacity of 185,000. The structural demand attended by TGI is the day-to-day demand from homes, industry, businesses, and vehicles that, as you can see in the lower chart, has remained constant throughout the years with an increase of 1% plus a year. So this structural demand is around 15 million, and this is, yes, our daily demand that we need to service. We are prepared to adapt to any variations, but here we see the thermal demand, which is very stable, and it is not periodic, and given the El Niño phenomenon. The last El Niño was in 2015, 2016, and as you might have heard, we have a new El Niño phenomenon, which is a dry season, and that's why we will need to have thermal generation, and which will require a lot of gas. Every 5 or 6 years, we see these El Niño phenomenons, and this is why we have these peaks there with a high demand that can oscillate between 120 million cubic feet in their most extreme spikes. Also, TGI manages the generation of greatest demand, which is the yellow line, where we see a year-on-year growth down to 2030. And this demand, we work it together with our clients. For the development of incremental demand, we manage increases in industry and NGV, which is natural gas for vehicles, where we see an opportunity for 15 million cubic feet per day, reaching around 90 million by 2030, equivalent to an 18% increase of the current structural demand. For this, we have demand construction keys, which we are working closely with our clients or distributors. One of them is clearly the connection of new sources, and insofar as we declare the new sources for the next quarter, this will provide security to industry and other businesses that might want to incur gas compared to what they do with coal and other sources. We also have regulatory management to improve competitiveness. For example, lowering the threshold of the non-regulated market and make gas more competitive compared to coal or liquid fuels. We can have differential tariffs for fuel substitution projects, and also TGI is working hand in hand with distributors and other entities to make contributions towards this substitution or conversion. For example, substitution means that we have an oven to generate steam that are using coal. We would need to substitute the equipment or some of the components of the equipment, and TGI will make contribution towards these changes and make it into a natural gas equipment, and we are also contributing in substituting diesel fleets to fleets that consume natural gas. And here in the map, we see the opportunities that we have in the short, medium, and long term to substitute most of these fuels, as you can see throughout the different regions in the country, switching from coal, GLP, and also diesel in particular for we want to change these vehicles to natural gas vehicles. Here we see our financial, commercial, and operational performance comparing 2022 to 2023. We continue to have the same total capacity, which is 4,033 kilometers of pipelines. Total capacity is 849 million cubic feet. The take-or-pay contracted capacity moved from 587 to 581. This was a decrease of 0.5% per day, but we see that the transported volume that corresponds to structural demand maintained with a slight difference between 490 in first quarter of 22 and 469. Due to the way we've managed our contracts, we see that in the first quarter of 2023, we see an increase of around 1.8 in annual variation in revenues, which is around $2 million, which shows us that we are moving up in terms of our revenues through our instruments. Now I will hand over the floor to Beatriz Arbeláez. Good morning, everybody. I will now show you why we can show these very good results. Number one, we can highlight the increase in operational income, which was 9.2%, which is $5.3 million compared to the first quarter of last year. Why have we had this increase in operational income? Because, as Wolfgang just said, we had higher income, which was an increase of $1.8 million, or 1.8% compared to the last quarter. But, as Monica said, we also need to include the capture of efficiencies and how it reflects in operational income, basically because we were able to reduce around $2.5 million the costs regarding the previous quarter. And why were we able to reduce costs? Number one, due to a reduction in maintenance costs, and also basically because these efficiencies have been captured through less expenditure in what we called maintenance due to right-of-way, and we also have a decrease in the appreciations of these during this quarter. If we look at EBITDA, in this case, we can highlight the increase that we have in the EBITDA margin compared to the first quarter of last year. As you can see there, in the top part of the chart, we moved from the EBITDA margin of 79.9% to an 81.8% margin, which means we increased the EBITDA margin by 2 percentage points. And this is complemented by the fact that we had a decrease in maintenance cost compared to last year, and we also recovered provisions for around $1.1 million, which also favored us to be able to increase EBITDA and reach the $85 million that we see in the graph. If we go into net income, obviously the behavior that we have seen in terms of operational income and of EBITDA is complemented by several factors, and obviously what we are seeing here is that we practically doubled our net income regarding the first quarter of 2022. This is supported by what I just mentioned, but is complemented by the good non-operational component. So why did we see good performance in non-operational aspects? This is due to the fact that, as we have told you before, we have been preparing for an eventual decrease, and we have also repurchased our bonds, and we have repurchased around now $171 million worth of bonds. So this reduced our interest costs. On the other hand, given the high exchange rates, because we are good liquidity generators, well, we have had financial yields that have been higher than last year. And another factor that has impacted us strongly is the exchange difference in the dividends that were issued by the Assembly that will mean for us $8 million in exchange differences. Another component that explains why we have this net increase in net income is due to the behavior that we've seen in deferred taxes. On this front, we have had an improvement in this deferred tax that is explained by the exchange rate difference. And this means that we were able to increase net income by 94%, which is basically twice as much as last year. Based on the repurchase of our bonds, as I mentioned, in total we have bought $171 million worth, but during this quarter we repurchased bonds for $15 million. This has led to an improvement in our debt indicators. Right now, our product of these repurchases, our debt, is down to $962 million, and the weighted average cost of this debt is 5.4 in US dollars. And this is why we have been able to improve, as we see in the graphs, our gross debt over EBITDA, net debt over EBITDA, have improved, and also we improved EBITDA over financial expenses because of the strategy that I just pointed out. And now I hand over the floor back to María Fernanda Ballesteros. Thank you, Beatriz. Good morning. in terms of our sustainability strategy and the strategy that we have been improving since 2022 and for 2023 has more challenging objectives. Now we are going to show you the main results. On the environmental aspect, we can highlight two dimensions along our decarbonization routes, which are operational efficiency and solutions based on nature. During this quarter, the measurement of fugitive emissions for 58% of TGI's measurable surface infrastructure. The debt for this year is 100% measurement of fugitive emissions. In terms of solution based on nature, we were able to create the first visits for the feasibility of maintaining reforestation in 5 properties in the department of Casanare, which is equivalent to 33 hectares of the 40 hectares that we have estimated as our goal for 2023. On the social front, in terms of communities, we can highlight the structuring of the gasification project for the municipalities of Neiva and Tello. This is very in line with our goal of increasing our beneficiaries for rural gasification. This we have the goal of constructing 42 interactive solar classrooms. We have already awarded the contract that will allow us to fulfill this goal. On the social aspect, we also launched the Leadership School for Women in the territory, which seeks to train 200 women in various areas of influence. And now on our governance front, we have two things I want to highlight, which is that we defined our company's relationship strategy and strategic issue strategy for 2023 on the agenda with the government. This includes strategic initiatives with needs to engage with prioritized groups, and also in line with our goal for 2023 to strengthen our suppliers. During this first quarter, we registered 3 suppliers in the first steps in the CSR program in partnership with the Externado University. These are sustainable accomplishments, and now I hand over the floor to Mónica.
De esta manera, que nos sentimos muy orgullosos, muy satisfechos por los resultados que le estamos entregando a nuestros accionistas y al país en este primer trimestre del año.
For this first quarter of 2023, and we also would like to reiterate that TGI's objective goes beyond just transporting natural gas. Our goals for 2023 reflect the commitment that we have with the development of a whole sector that for us is key, from securing the supply of gas in the medium and long term, and also our bet on increasing demand, which, as we said at the beginning, this is a strategic bet.
De progreso para el país, los usuarios y las comunidades con las que operamos. Muchas gracias.
In which we operate. Thank you for your time, and now we are open to questions. We have many questions, so I will ask you to please be brief. We have a question from Florencia Mayorga from MetLife. I would like to understand when you expect to have an answer by the CREC regarding the regulatory changes, and an additional question, which is why did we have a favorable WACC review? We will hear from Luis Alfredo on these issues. Regarding the first question on regulatory changes, according to the regulatory agenda of the CREC, we expect that the final resolution that modifies Resolution 175 of 2021 will be issued before the end of the second quarter of this year. And this is why we believe that CREC is working on this objective. So we expect that by June, we are going to see the modification of Resolution 175. In terms of the second question on why we had a favorable change in WACC, here I would say that the methodology in calculating WACC implies that if the tax rate for 2023 is different to the tax rate that we used to calculate WACC, then we need to do a verification to see if with the new values that includes this new tax rate and the information as of 31 of December of last year, if that WACC changes more than 4%, then the CREG needs to also change this rate. The rate that we used to calculate the current WACC was 31%. This was for 2021, and the tax rate for 2023 is 35%. Therefore, they are different. The CREG, based on our request, did the recalculation of the WACC and determined that, yes, effectively, WACC changed more than 4%. And as Monica said, is 1188, so it issued this resolution for comments, proposing this new WACC for the transport sector.
Gracias, Luis Alfredo. De la misma persona tenemos otras preguntas.
We
Voy a
have
pasar la número
more
dos
questions from the same person.
a Beatriz.
We'll hear from Beatriz, our CFO. Have you received a favorable answer in terms of
Beatriz, adelante.
FX hedge?
Gracias, Manuela.
Thank you, Manuela.
En este momento estamos haciendo
Right now,
todos los trámites,
we are going through
pues,
the
con el Ministerio de
formalities
Hacienda
with
en
the
relación con las
Ministry of the
autorizaciones
Treasury in terms of the
correspondientes para
corresponding authorizations
una,
to
aprobación en
obtain
el caso en
an
que,
approval
pues, ya
in the
se
case
nos detone
that
el cambio de la moneda funcional de dólares a
the
pesos.
exchange rate blows up.
Gracias, Beatriz. Y la última que tenemos de Florencia por ahora. ¿Cómo se ve los trends
And
de
from
producción
Florencia,
en
how do
principales
you
puntos
see
de
the trends
inversión?
in the main
¿Esperan
injection
alargar los
points?
contratos,
Do you
dado
expect
que
to
la
increase the
remaining life de los contratos
further
es
the contracts, given that the
6.87 y
life
el bono
of the
vence en
contracts is
2028?
3.87 and the
Podría
bond
complicar un poco más las
matures,
fechas de financiación en
which
caso de que no pueda
will complicate
recontratarse más.
the
Voy a pedir
refinancing.
a Wolfgang que nos ayude, por favor, con esta respuesta. Adelante.
Please, Wolfgang, if you could answer this question. Yes, I will provide the first part of the question, which is are the sources, as I said before. By the end of the second quarter of this year, we will declare natural gas sources where producers will go out to the market to say what they will have available in the medium and long term, and this is where they will contract with the distributors for these gas volumes, and that effectively leads to contracts being for the long term for capacity and time with us. And Beatriz, if you might answer on the financial aspect.
No era preguntar, era un comentario que
It
se
was
podía
more of a
afectar la
comment than a question if this could affect refinancing.
Tranqui. Sigo contigo, Wolfgang.
So,
Roberto
Wolfgang,
Manuela, solamente reforzar un punto
I would just
en
like
esa
to
respuesta que me parece
reinforce
muy relevante.
something
Nosotros,
here on
y yo
this
lo
regard.
mencioné a lo largo de mi presentación,
I already
sí es
mentioned this throughout
cierto,
my
nuestro
presentation, even though
trabajo
it's true that
en el posicionamiento
we've
del
worked to
gas,
position gas
más allá de ser un transportador, ha estado focalizado muy
and
fuerte en todo lo
positioning
que ha sido
us
la
beyond the
creación de demanda
transportation of gas.
adicional.
We've worked on
Nuestro trabajo
creating
muy
additional
fuerte
demand.
en lo que ha sido el balance
We've also
del
worked
año
hard
anterior y
on
todo lo que
the
llevamos
balance of last year,
corrido
and
este
everything
año
that
es la
we've seen
certeza
this
de
year
fuentes.
is the
Para
certainty
nosotros
of the
tener la
sources.
certeza de
For us
fuentes
to have
es un
certainty
factor
on
fundamental.
our sources of
Estamos
gas is a
esperando el
fundamental
informe de
aspect.
la NH
We are
que debe
awaiting
salir
the
ahorita.
report of
Para
the
nosotros
NIH
estar
that should be
claros
published
en
soon
que
for us
realmente
to have
el
clarity
país
in terms
tiene
of
la
the
capacidad
country
de gas
having the
que se requiere
capacity
para una demanda
required
que ha venido
for a
creciendo
demand that
y
has
para
been
los
growing
proyectos de
and for
descarbonización que tiene
decarbonization
Colombia
projects that
comprometidos,
Colombia has
donde el
committed
gas
to,
es ese energético clave para la
where
transición.
gas will be a
Les quiero
key
dejar como
aspect of the
punto
transition.
muy claro porque
So I want to be
nosotros
clear on this
hemos traído,
because
como yo lo
we
mencionaba en la
have brought, as I
presentación,
showed in my presentation,
ingresos adicionales,
additional
ingresos que
income,
se han contratado por 3
income that has
meses
been
y que
contracted for 3
lógicamente
months
están a la espera
and
de la
that are
certeza de
logically
fuentes
awaiting
que
the
los productores
certainty
le
of our
tienen que dar
sources
al
that
país
producers
completo
have to
para que
provide to our country
lógicamente podamos hacer
so that
nosotros
we may sign
Gracias, Mónica.
new contracts.
La siguiente pregunta para Wolfgang.
The next question is
de
for
Roberto
Wolfgang
Paniagua de
from
Casa
Roberto
Bolsa.
Paniagua from Casa
¿Cómo pueden
Bolsa.
reflejarse en
how can we reflect in volumes and operational sources the coming of the El Niño phenomenon for 2023?
¿Cómo puede reflejarse?
Can you
En
repeat it?
volúmenes
How can we
y cifras
affect volumes and
operacionales la
operational
llegada del
numbers
fenómeno del Niño
the El
para
Niño
2023?
phenomenon in 2023?
Efectivamente, en fenómeno del niño.
Yes, regarding the El Niño phenomenon,
Las
you might recall that we have thermal plants in the interior of the country that are around 6 of them.
Claramente, pues está, digamos,
Clearly,
la expectativa
we have the
de cuánto y qué
expectation
tan fuerte y
of
cuándo llegue el fenómeno
when
del Niño.
and how
La
long will the El
infraestructura
Niño
está dispuesta y
last. The
capacitada
infrastructure
para
has the
alimentar
capacity
las
to
diferentes
feed
térmicas, ¿no?
the
de
different
todo el
thermal
país.
plants.
Y entonces, dependiendo de los volúmenes que
And so,
consuma cada
depending
uno-
on
cada
the
una de
volumes that
ellas,
each of these
pues,
consume,
será la suma del gas que necesitaremos
that will be the total
para
gas
ese
that we
efecto.
would need to this effect.
Gracias. Ahora tenemos una pregunta para
Now we
Cálidda
have a
Álvarez,
question from
de
for
Roberto
Cálidda
Paniagua
Álvarez.
también, de Casa de Bolsa, nos pregunta cuáles
Roberto
son
Paniagua,
los planes de expansión
what are
por
the
fuera de
expansion
Lima
plans
metropolitana.
beyond Metropolitan Lima?
Adelante.
Manuela, gracias. Bueno, actualmente hemos realizado estudios fuera de Lima.
We've
Estos
done
estudios
studies
han sido entregados a
beyond the
las autoridades con
Metropolitan
el
Lima, and
objetivo de
we've
apoyar
provided these
en
to
el
the
proyecto de
authorities
masificación de gas
to
natural.
support the
Nosotros
massification of
enfocamos
natural gas
sigue
project.
siendo nuestra área
Our
de
focus
Lima
continues to
y
be
juntamente pues cumplir con el plan quinquenal de
Lima
inversiones
and
aprobado.
fulfill the objectives of the 5-year plan that has already been approved.
Gracias. Tenemos otra pregunta. Nuestro
We have another
chat en
question
inglés,
coming from our chat.
y
The
es,
question is in
¿cuándo
English,
deberíamos empezar
which
a
is
ver,
when
renovaciones
could
de
we start to
contratos
see contract renewals
que se vencen en el 2024?
which expire in 2024?
Wolfgang, adelante.
Wolfgang, to you.
Creo que vuelve y se une con las
I think that this
respuestas que
ties to the
anteriormente
previous
Mónica
answers
dio.
given by Monica and
Tenemos la
myself.
expectativa de la
We have the
declaración de
expectation of
fuentes de
the
gas,
declaration of
lo cual
gas
le dará
sources,
esa seguridad
which will
al país
provide
y a todos los
security
clientes
to our
en
country and to
torno
all
a
of our
la
clients
expectativa y el plazo
regarding the expectations
en
and
el
the
cual podemos hacer
terms
ejercicio
under which we
de
can
nuevos contratos.
sign new contracts.
Dale, perfecto. Ahora Beatriz, si nos ayudas con la
Now,
siguiente.
Beatriz, a
¿Cuál
question
es
for
el
you.
plan
What
con
is
respecto
the plan
al
regarding
intercompañía,
the intercompany
con
credit with the GEP?
Este crédito es una parte permanente de la estructura de capital?
Is this
¿O
a
será
permanent part of the
refinanciado este
capital
año con un
structure, or
crédito
will
en
it
pesos?
be refinanced with a loan in pesos?
Gracias, Manuela.
Thank you,
Tal vez como
Manuela.
lo hemos comentado,
As we
en la presentación de resultados anterior,
heard
la
during
estrategia
our
que
results
nosotros
presentation,
tenemos
the
con respecto al
strategy
rating
that
de
we have regarding the
compañía
intercompany
es
credit
fundamentalmente obtener
is
los recursos
fundamentally to
del
obtain
mercado
the
financiero para
resources from
poder
the
hacer
financial
el
market
pago
to be able
a,
to
pues, al grupo
pay
en el mes de
the group
diciembre. Entonces
during the
estamos
month
haciendo
of
todas las
December.
gestiones
So
en áreas de
we are
obtener
doing all that is
básicamente
required
recursos
to
nuevos
obtain
por
new
parte del sector
resources
financiero.
from the financial sector.
Gracias, Beatriz. Y otra para ti, respecto
Another
a
question for you
a las recompras de los
regarding
bonos,
the
estoy traduciendo.
bond repurchase.
¿Hay un nivel de deuda en
Is there
dólares que
a
la
level of
compañía
debt in
está
dollars that the
targeting
company is
para
targeting
reducir
to
el desbalance entre
reduce
monedas,
the
dada, la
asymmetry
conversión a pesos?
between the currencies?
Fundamentalmente nosotros hemos venido
Basically,
generando la
we
estrategia de
have been
recompra y
implementing our
fundamentalmente
repurchase strategy,
hemos
and
monitoreado los recursos
we have
disponibles
monitored
de
the
caja
available resources
para
in our
reducir los costos
cash flow
los
to
eventuales
reduce
costos
the
financieros
eventual
de una
financial
cobertura.
costs of
En
a
ese
hedge.
sentido, lo que
In
en
that
este
sense,
momento tenemos es
what
una
we have right now
autorización para
is
hacer una
an
recompra
authorization to
adicional,
do an additional repurchase
fundamentalmente de alrededor de unos
of
40
around
millones de
$40 million.
pero pues también estamos monitoreando los
But
precios
we are
de
also
manera tal
monitoring
que
our
nosotros
prices in a way
estaríamos
that
dispuestos a
we
comprar
would be
si
willing
los
to
descuentos
repurchase
son
more if the
importantes
discounts
y nos
are
dan
significant
beneficio
and
para la compañía.
are beneficial to the company.
Muchas gracias. Mónica, la siguiente de Florencia, nuevamente de MedLife.
Question
¿Pueden
from
detallar un
Florencia at
poco
MedLife.
cuántos
Can
de
you
estos 18 millones
tell us
se vieron
of
en
these
el
$18
primer
million
Q del 23
came from
y exactamente a
first
qué se
quarter in
refieren esas
2023, and what
eficiencias?
do
¿Será
these efficiencies
digitalización?
refer to?
Sí, efectivamente, cuando nosotros mencionamos los 18
Yes,
millones
when
de
we
dólares,
talk about
son
$18 million,
iniciativas que son
these
recurrentes,
are
Lorenzo. Eso es
recurring
parte de
recurring
nuestro trabajo, o
initiatives. This
sea,
is
son
part of our
iniciativas
work.
que ya han pasado por todo el
These are
proceso
initiatives that
y
have
que
gone through the
realmente
whole
están trayendo
process and
eficiencias
are
al
really
negocio.
bringing
Entonces
in
son
efficiencies to the
iniciativas
business.
recurrentes que
These are
se
recurring
mantienen en
and
el
that will be
PIG del negocio.
reflected
En
in the
esas
P&L
iniciativas
of our
tenemos, yo
business.
te diría, que
Among
tres
these
tipos de
initiatives, we
iniciativas.
have three types of
Iniciativas de
initiatives.
mejoras
Initiatives for improvements
manejo del OPEX,
in
¿de acuerdo?
the OPEX
Es muy
management,
relevante para
which is
nosotros.
very relevant for us.
Iniciativas en todo lo que
Initiatives
corresponde a
regarding
nuestro trabajo en rediseño de procesos,
the
que
redesign of our
también es muy
processes, that
importante.
is also
Y
very
muchas
important,
iniciativas
and
que
many,
este
many
año tal vez
initiatives
es como
that
el
this
punto
year
nuevo. Recuerda que
will
nosotros
be
tenemos un proceso de
in
incubación y estas
innovation.
son
We
unas
have an incubation
iniciativas
process
que
for
no
these
vienen
initiatives,
top-down,
and
sino
these are not
bottom-up.
top-down initiatives,
Entonces,
but
gran
bottom-up
parte de lo que estamos
initiatives.
haciendo para
So
este
a
2023
big part of what we're
es
doing for
no solamente
2023
que esas
is
iniciativas
not
vayan
only that these
bottom-up,
initiatives are
trabajar con
bottom-up,
equipos multifuncionales,
working
como ha
worked
sido
by
nuestro modelo
multifunctional
de operar
teams,
estas
which
eficiencias,
has been the way
sino
we've
también
managed these
acompañar
efficiencies, but
tecnologías
also
para que se puedan
to accompany it
potenciar los procesos
with
que ya están
technology so that
capturando
we can
eficiencias
enhance
y que
processes that
entreguen
are already capturing
incrementales
efficiencies
a
and
nivel de
can
financiero.
bring incremental
Quiero
increments to
ahí,
our
Manuela,
algorithm, to our financial
reforzar un
algorithm.
punto de una de
I
las
would like to
preguntas que hicieron sobre el
reinforce
fenómeno del
the
Niño,
answer to
que
the
contestó Wolfgang, pero le
question
quiero dar la
regarding the El Nino
certeza en esta
phenomena.
llamada al
I
sistema
would like to
que
assure the
TGI está
system on this
muy
call that
preparado
TGI
para
is
todo
very
lo que
well
es fenómeno
prepared
del Niño,
for the
desde
El
lo que
Nino
significa
phenomenon
nuestra infraestructura,
in
como
terms
lo
of
que
our
significa la
infrastructure and
dinámica
also
de
in
las
terms
reservas
of the
térmicas
incremental
que
demand coming
mencionaba
from these thermal plants,
Wolfgang,
as
y sobre
Wolfgang
las
mentioned,
cuales nuestro gran
and on
objetivo
which our main
es buscar
objective is
o asegurar
to
que si salen
ensure
a respaldarse
that
en
if
gas, nosotros
they
tengamos la
want
capacidad
to
para
use
poder
gas, we
transportar
have
ese
the
gas
capacity
y
to deliver
lógicamente
that
la
gas,
térmica tendrá que
and
tener muy clara
also
lo que
the thermal
significa
plant
la
will have to be
fuente
very
que
clear
se va
on
a
the
trabajar.
source
No
that
sé,
is
Alfred,
going
si
to
tú
be
tienes
used.
a la mano
I don't
los
know if
números
anybody has
que ya hemos revisado
at hand
para
the
todo lo que
numbers
significa
that we've
estar
reviewed.
preparados para niños.
Sí, Mónica, ahí tengo algunos a la mano.
Yes, I have them at hand.
La capacidad de generación de las térmicas.
The first is the generation capacity of the plants that are connected to our system, that are in the interior of the country, have a consumption potential of around 210 million cubic feet. That's the consumption potential, a bit plus or less or in 2016, the consumption peak was 180 million cubic feet. Bearing this in mind, we have double-checked our system. Our system will be available at 100% to service whatever is required in terms of transport of natural gas. Also, the maintenance that is scheduled for this term does not affect our capacity. So yes, maintenance will not affect the delivery of natural gas if required. Regarding capacity along our pipeline that received the natural gas source, we have Avellano Barranca with a capacity, an available capacity that is above 150 million cubic feet per day, which is enough to receive a good amount of natural gas if the decision is made to bring gas from the north through the early interconnection of the transport systems of the interior with the coast. In terms of Cusiana, Cusiana has a high elevated higher capacity, contracted capacity, but we do not use all of that capacity. So at Cusiana, we have 50 million cubic feet available to be able to move additional gas, which are usually unused. That capacity will be available to attend those potential new requirements of natural gas that can come from Cusiana. In terms of pipelines that service the thermal plants, we have enough capacity to deliver the gas that they might require. which will surely be a significant increase due to the El Niño phenomena that, according to the expectations and from the National Weather Service, the most significant moment would be around next year, February, March, where we need to be ready, and TGI will be ready to service that period. Thank you, Luis Alfredo. We have a question from Cristian Fran, Ezequiel Fernandez. Considering the combined effect of a less WAC, the migration to pesos, the change in the valuation of the assets, what percentage impact do you expect on the tariffs with all of these changes having been implemented? Regarding this scenario, of the WAC and the exchange from dollars to pesos, and also what will derive from the changes of Resolution 175, and how will it reflect in our rates. Right now, we do not expect significant changes in the rates. We cannot talk about specific numbers, specific rates, due to the effect that this could have in the markets. We have a policy that we can, because of policy, we cannot share this information with you, but I can tell you that we do not expect significant changes. Wolfgang, if you can help us with the next one, which is regarding substitution projects. This comes from Ezequiel and the balance team. The substitution projects from coal to gas. Do you expect any regulation from the government that might help to accelerate these? Yes, a lot of industry still uses coal, but cement companies and steel companies, on the one hand, historically, they have used coal because of the low cost, but today coal and gas are more competitive in terms of their price, and also decarbonization has become important, and especially the big multinational companies and exporting companies are very aware of this carbon footprint issue, and they have projects by achieving an eventual net zero. So these are the industries where we are working on substituting in the short term. We have another question from the same team. Where is the Pacific LNG project? Are there any news regarding a potential auction? Yes, the national government did a new round for the regasification plant in the Pacific. We are looking at these new points because there will be more time to present our offer. What we can say is that the important part is that the project is bankable, and this is something that we're looking into. We need to understand the announcements from the government, but I can say that we are not seeing changes to the risk factor in the development of the construction stage that would lead the project not to be bankable. Maybe I'm being hasty here, but the release from the government was yesterday in the afternoon, so we are still looking into it. Where do we have the midstream project for 110 million cubic feet per day and $900 million capex for the offshore Ecopetrol shale wells that you advanced in November? Is this moving along, but maybe without TGI? Yes, it is moving along, but definitely with TGI on board. We continue to work with the producer. For them, it is very important to evacuate any gas that comes from these wells, and we continue to work hand in hand with them up to a point that we are now working of the environmental diagnostic stage to look at alternatives through which for the pipeline to be laid. But we continue to work with them very closely. And the last question from Ezequiel for Beatriz.
balance en la línea de pasivos, cuentas a
On
pagar,
the
partes relacionadas,
liabilities
hay un aumento de
accounts
95
payable,
millones de dólares
we see
desde
an increase
diciembre.
of
Estos
$95
son los
million
dividendos por
compared to
pagar.
December. Are these dividends that we have to
Efectivamente,
pay?
son los dividendos por
Yes,
pagar.
these
Se
are the
decretaron,
dividends
como lo
that
mencioné en la
are
presentación,
payable, as I mentioned in my
420
presentation, which
millones de
correspond to
pesos,
421 million.
entonces, que efectivamente corresponde a los dividendos por pagar.
Perfecto. Y ya para concluir, Ferney Amaya
And
Camargo,
Ferney Amaya
una persona
Camargo,
natural, nos dice,
a
TGI
natural
es una
person,
empresa
says
gigante,
TGI is a
posible primer
giant company
listamiento en la bolsa de valores.
and could be
Sería
listed
muy
in the
bueno
stock
encontrar una
exchange.
empresa como esta en
It
el mercado de
would be
valores.
very good to find a
Mónica,
company like
comentarios.
TGI in the stock
Pues
market.
muchas gracias, Ferney. Gracias
Thank you, Ferney.
por mencionarlo.
Thank you for
Como
mentioning
bien
it.
sabemos, nosotros somos parte de una
As
holding,
we know, we are
y esa
part of a
holding es
holding
el Grupo
company,
Energía Bogotá.
which is
En
the
la medida
Grupo
en que
Energía Bogotá, the
contribuimos a los
GB,
resultados
and
de manera importante de la holding,
if we contribute to the results of the holding,
del Grupo Energía Bogotá.
so my invitation for you is to buy stock in GB. Yes, that way you may not only benefit from the profitability of TGI, but also from our operations in Peru, our new acquisitions in Brazil, and everything that we are doing to increase the profitability of our company. So with that, I thank you for your time, your questions. We at TGI will always be willing to answer your questions. We will be updating you regarding the regulatory changes that took up most of the questions. And with that, I hand over the floor to Monica for some closing remarks. And thank you, everybody. I would like to thank everybody that was connected to this call today. We reiterate our commitment to Colombia, our commitment to the development of our country, our commitment to make gas the energy source for the transition, and an infinite thank you to our team, because those results would not have been possible without the support and the commitment of more than 500 collaborators that at each of the offices have provided us with these incredible results in the transformation of TGI to continue to bring collective prosperity and transforming lives with this competitive and sustainable energy source.
Esa energía que te acompaña todos los días, la energía que mueve a todo un país, que nos brinda un aire más limpio para respirar, que impulsa a las empresas a ser más competitivas con sus productos y servicios sostenibles para todos, que transforma vidas y lleva prosperidad colectiva a su alrededor. En TGI estamos comprometidos con esa energía, la energía de la transición, el gas natural, la energía para hoy, mañana y el futuro. TGI, mejoramos vidas con energía sostenible y competitiva.